Okay, it's 5 o'clock, so I'll go ahead and call our meeting to order, starting with the acknowledgement of traditional lands. We acknowledge that we are on land and surrounded by water, originally inhabited by Indigenous peoples who have traveled this area since time immemorial. This territory is within the lands honored by the Wampum Treaties, agreements between the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Lenni Lenape, and allied nations to peacefully share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. Specifically, we would like to acknowledge the presence of the Huron-Wendat peoples in the Three Fires Confederacy, Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture while remaining committed to moving forward respectfully with all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. For attendance, we have Trustee Cheen and Chair of the Board, Trustee Hatfield, who's here as an ex officio member. We have regrets from Trustee Leclerc, and we also have from the senior team, Superintendent Armstrong, Director Houston, Mr. Mayhew, and Ms. Malash as our recorder. And there are trustees in the gallery, Trustee Burgess and Trustee McKinley. Item D, approval of the agenda, looking for a mover and a seconder. Moved by Trustee Hatfield, seconded by Trustee Chin. There's no changes. All those in favor? And that carries. Item E, declaration of conflict of interest. If there are any. Seeing none. Item F, approval of the minutes from the May 13th Finance and Facility Services meeting. Looking for a mover and a seconder. Moved by Trustee Chin, seconded by Trustee Hatfield. Any corrections or changes to the minutes? Seeing none. All those in favor? And that carries. There are no delegations for today. Moving on to staff reports. Item H1, community planning and partnerships. Are there any questions from trustees for the senior team? Moving on to item H2, the climate action plan update. Are there any questions from trustees? Seeing none. New business, we do have two recommendations, starting off with the 2025-26 draft budget. The recommendation being that the Finance and Facility Services Committee recommend to the board that the board approve an operating budget of $545,763,121 for the fiscal period of September 1st, 2025 to August 31st, 2026, resulting in a deficit for compliance purposes of the Ministry of Education compliance calculation of $988,924, and that the Finance and Facility Services Committee recommend to the board that the board approve a capital budget of $45,755,351 for the fiscal period of September 1st, 2025 to August 31st, 2026. And I believe there's a presentation from Senior Admin by Superintendent Armstrong.
Thank you through the chair. I am pleased to present the draft 25-26 budget to the Finance and Facility Services Committee this afternoon. I would like to thank Mr. Mayhew for his assistance and for his great work during very compressed timelines, and for Ms. Malash for quickly putting together the budget packages. I would also like to thank the senior team who have been very supportive during the budget process. It is great to work with a team that understands the importance of fiscal responsibility and how the education funding formulas work. I'm just not sure where I'm pointing that exactly to. Oh, there we go. I got it. So you'll see on this slide just the items that we're going to review today in our presentation. First item being the budget process and timelines. So as we waited for the release of the education funding, a lot of budget consultation and upfront work was undertaken, as you'll see on this slide. On May the 23rd, 2025, core education funding was released by the Ministry of Education. Following today's Finance and Facility Services Committee meeting, a budget presentation will be shared on June 17th at the special meeting of the Committee of the Whole. The draft budget will be presented for recommendation for approval at the Board of Trustees public meeting on June 17th, and the budget in its EFIS submission format will be sent to the Ministry of Education by June the 30th. Next, I'd just like to highlight for you or go back over for you the education funding. Education funding is represented by three pillars, as you will see on this slide. Core education funding is made up of 6 funds and 28 allocations. Core education funding provides permanent, ongoing operating funding to school boards and funding to maintain schools. Responsive education programs has 7 themes, as you'll see noted on this slide. This funding provides targeted, temporary, and time-limited supplemental funding to school boards based on government priority themes. Capital funding, or building, expanding, and renewing schools, consists of 6 funds. BERS, as we like to call it, provides funding for the construction, purchase, additions, renovations of schools, the maintenance and improvement of the conditions of schools, and debt service costs. Province-wide, core education funding is projected to be $30.3 billion in 2025-26, with the classroom staffing fund representing 55% of the total. Core education funding has increased by 3.3% over the prior year, mainly due to adjustments for salaries and benefits benchmarks due to the collective agreements and Bill 124 arbitrated settlements. The education funding formula has a few new changes for 25-26, as you'll note on this slide. The first one, labor-related changes, include updates to salary benchmarks for ratified collective agreements and remedies that are payable or were paid under Bill 124. Student transportation funding has been updated to provide funding for the non-refundable portion of HST, that's the harmonized sales tax, and a top-up so that all school boards receive an increase in funding of 2.5%. The complex supports allocation within the Special Education Fund has been updated to include 2 new funding components, replacing the Education and Community Partnerships Program component. The non-staff portions of benchmarks have been increased by 2% to assist school boards in managing increases in commodity prices, including electricity, insurance, and other costs. The implementation of the 2021 Statistics Canada census data is in year 2 of a 5-year phase-in period. The updated census data impacts the allocations for the remote and rural allocation, diversity in English language learners, demographic needs, safe and accepting schools, and special education. The time-limited recent immigration supplement has been discontinued for 25-26, as recent immigration enrollment has returned to pre-pandemic levels provincially. And transparency measures have been introduced for the school board administrative expense limit. In the first year of non-compliance, school boards will be required to submit and post a compliance management plan on the board's website, as well as provide regular progress updates on that plan. In the second consecutive year of non-compliance, school boards will be required to hire a third-party organization to review their administrative expenses. This would be at the cost of the school board. And in the third consecutive year of non-compliance, the ministry will then become involved on specific adjustments that it would like to see made to administrative expenses. Moving on to the planning assumptions, the draft budget is predicated on 6 planning assumptions: adherence to the Education Act, alignment with the board's mission, vision, and strategic priorities, adherence to all collective agreements and contractual obligations, compliance with all Ministry of Education requirements, including the multi-year financial recovery plan, conservative enrollment projections, and the thoughtful use of resources in an equitable manner to meet the needs of students. Because the budget is prepared in advance and it's based on assumptions and estimates, there are risks that our actual results may vary from the original budget. The key budget risks will be individually discussed in the next few slides. First budget risk is enrollment. Enrollment projections are completed in the spring, and they're based on known registrations at the time that the budget is prepared. Late or delayed registrations are not captured in the budget enrollment projections. Changes in enrollment may result in increases or decreases in core education funding, including triggering the enrollment declining grant, the declining enrollment grant, either increasing it or potentially decreasing it. Any changes that we realize in enrollment since the original budget will be captured in revised estimates that are submitted to the ministry in December of 2025. Supply costs and absences is another risk to the budget. Core education funding is insufficient to cover the projected costs related to supplies and absences. The board continues to experience high levels of staff absenteeism and supply costs. And sick and short-term leave programs are centrally negotiated by the province, which makes it challenging for the board, although we try. Special education, as we all know, is underfunded, and particularly based on our board's program delivery model. There are a number of students that require special education resources, and that is growing. We have students on wait lists. Our Gains and Steps program models, as I mentioned, are designed differently, so they're not necessarily funded that way in the core education funding grant. Students' needs are becoming more complex. There's very modest increases in the 25-26 funding for special education, and it's primarily related to increases in salary and benefits benchmarks. And we have, as we've noted, we have chronic and significant underfunding that we have seen year after year. So as a result, in order to support our students with special education needs, we have to reallocate any unenveloped core ed funding to support the changing and the greater needs of our students. This one boggles my mind. Statutory benefits, we have chatted about this before. We are required to remit taxes, payroll taxes that are federally mandated for increases, and there are increases in the CPP and the EI rates. They are prescribed, and we do not get enough funding to cover the increases, let alone the total amount of the employer's share of these payroll taxes. With the impact of U.S. tariffs and the upward pressure on inflation, the purchasing power of the board's ministry funding continues to decline. Prices continue to be volatile, and vendors and service providers are not willing to hold pricing for any extended length of time. While core ed funding has been increased by 2% to account for inflation, it is insufficient based on the results of recent competitive procurements and the procurement restrictions policy. As a result, administration is prioritizing and monitoring its purchasing activities carefully to account for the implicit reduction in funding. Aging infrastructure is also another risk to this budget, particularly if we have anything that is unanticipated from a repairs and maintenance standpoint. And also to highlight that there is no ministry funding that is provided for administrative buildings. So for example, the board office and facility services do not get any funding for repairs. So anything that is considered urgent and requires repairs has to be funded through accumulated surplus for those two buildings. This slide outlines the deferred maintenance across the board's facilities by year, this has been determined by the ministry. So as you'll see, we have over $538 million of deferred maintenance. The Ministry of Education hires third-party consultants to review school buildings for infrastructure requirements on a 10-year cycle. The ministry commenced a new 10-year cycle in 2024, and several of the board's facilities were examined this year, although we don't have the results of that yet. Year one is considered an urgent priority, and that's $19.5 million. Year two is designated as high, which is $124 million. Year three is considered medium, which is $63 million. And then anything after year three is considered low by the ministry, and that's $332.4 million. It's also important to note that the ministry has instructed school boards to prioritize the spending from their school condition improvement funding and school renewal allocation funding to address facility condition, ventilation, accessibility, health and safety, and general code requirements as the priorities. And this provides you, just looking at year one, the $19.5 million of the urgent priorities. And this just shows you what those items typically are made up of. So for example, building envelope could consist of ductwork in the building. Electrical is fairly straightforward. Mechanical would be like the building automation systems, HVAC. Site work could be parking lots, some exterior around a building. Student transportation is another risk for the budget. The core education funding is not sufficient to cover the projected costs. We have rising bus operator costs based on an agreement that was recently negotiated with bus operators. It includes a 6.87% increase to the base and variable rates. And the capital costs for purchasing new school buses is far higher than the 2.5% that the ministry increased individual school boards' allocations for. We do also continue to have a risk with respect to driver retention and shortage. We're very fortunate at how well it's being managed by Windsor-Essex Student Transportation Services. I don't ever recall where we've had buses canceled, but it's been close. And so this still continues to be a challenge. Lastly, the board has continual exposure to claims, grievances, and legal settlements. There are some claims that are not subject to a limitation period, and some settlements which are not covered by insurance, which would then require the board to use its accumulated surplus to address. Potential claims, grievances, and legal settlements are not included in the preliminary budget due to their unpredictability and the inability to estimate a potential liability. We must also remain cognizant of the requirement to maintain an accumulated surplus balance, excluding any amounts that are committed, of at least 2% of the board's operating allocation, as per the ministry's requirements in improving the board's multi-year financial recovery plan. Now, I'll very briefly go over for you the 25-26 draft budget. This budget I find this budget's very challenging to read. We have declining student enrollment, which we'll talk about briefly, but you would not know that if you were looking at the revenues on the budget, because the salary and the benefits benchmarks have increased so much. The board actually has higher ministry funding. As well, you probably wouldn't be able to readily identify as well that cost reduction measures have been put into place based on the multi-year financial recovery plan that was approved by trustees and the Minister of Education. And it is included in the back of the budget binder packages that have been shared with you. Those are all reflected in this budget. And the other complexity is because there is a deficit proposed for 25-26, the Minister of Education's approval is required. This is tiny, I'm sorry for that, but this is a slide that shows you the preliminary 25-26 budget. As I mentioned, while there is an increase in operating revenues projected, a preliminary deficit for 2025-26 of $988,924 is projected. The draft budget reflects the implementation of cost reduction measures mentioned or noted in the multi-year financial recovery plan that was approved in 2024. There are other cost reduction measures that were recommended by administration that's reflected in this budget. Details of that are on page 25 in your budget package. And it's also really important to note that this draft budget is relying on $4 million of one-time revenue from the declining enrollment grant because the enrollment obviously has fallen. And so this highlights the need that we have to continually keep reviewing our cost structures, because that funding will not exist next year. We need to address it. The preliminary budget, as I mentioned, does not meet the ministry's compliance requirements. While board administration and facilities and transportation expense limits are compliant, and the in-year deficit is less than 1% of the board's operating allocation, because the board is in a multi-year financial recovery plan, and it has had 3 consecutive years, including 25-26, of deficits, the Minister of Education has to approve the deficit of the $988,000. It should be noted we do not have to file the in-year deficit elimination plan as we may have had to do in previous years, because we have a multi-year financial recovery plan that we're already under. The risk profile for the board from the Ministry of Education's perspective will likely remain unchanged, and it's unclear if there will be further monitoring or compliance measures that will be implemented by the ministry. We won't know that until they've had an opportunity to assess the approved budget. This slide provides a summary of the projected accumulated surplus. Effective with the 26-27 budget, the board is expected to retain an accumulated surplus balance of at least 2% of its operating allocation, or approximately $9.8 million if you use 2025-26 operating allocation as a guide. And that's required by the Ministry of Education as part of approving the board's multi-year financial recovery plan. That excludes anything that's committed, so the capital items are considered appropriated, so you would not be looking at that line. We would be looking at the operating line and making that calculation. When examining funding allocations and related expenses, there are several areas where the board experiences funding deficits because the funding allocation is inadequate to support the current expense structure of the board. There are 5 primary areas where funding deficits arise, as noted on the slide, totaling $28.1 million. These funding gaps must be managed through unenveloped core education funding, and this is going to require that trustees and senior administration agree on and identify the key priorities of the board to inform budget decisions. A substantial amount of the board's revenue is based on student enrollment. Therefore, administration is conservative when projecting enrollment, utilizing known registrations at the time of budget preparation and students that are known to be returning. Elementary enrollment is projected to decrease by 521 average daily enrollment students over 24-25 across all grade levels. The decrease in enrollment has led to the board receiving the declining enrollment grant for 25-26, which I've mentioned is time limited, and it's really bridge funding that provides the board with time to adjust its cost structures to its newer enrollment levels. It's also important to note that the ministry has cautioned all school boards to be conservative in their enrollment projections, particularly in the areas for JK and SK enrollment, based on trends that they're seeing across the province. From a secondary panel perspective, enrollment is projected to decrease for 25-26 by 463.5 average daily enrollment students compared to the prior year's budget. And this very exciting graph shows you, well, it tells a story. It shows you that over the past 4 years that our enrollment has been stagnant, but now you can start to see ever so slightly that there is that pattern of declining enrollment that is starting to emerge. So what do we do? So administration has made all efforts to reduce non-salary expenditures to maintain student programming and keep the board's funding closely tied to students. Unfunded programs were also carefully considered in developing the draft 25-26 budget. So this budget includes a reduction of 7 full-time equivalent non-bargaining employee positions, a reduction of 20.5 FTE central office positions. There are reductions in non-salary budgets across a number of areas. The IB program, the primary years program in our elementary schools, has been eliminated effective September 1st. The IB program at Leamington District Secondary School has also been eliminated effective September 1st. And the IB program at Riverside Secondary School is going to be phased out over the next few years. Additionally, the French immersion program at Marlborough and Forest Glade Public Schools have been eliminated, which allowed us to achieve some class size efficiencies. And those students are being offered those programs in schools that are close by. Additionally, we have looked at and made boundary adjustments for our students that are participating in English as a second language. We have consolidated the Forest Glade Primary Learning Center, the students and the teachers, so that they will now be attending with the Forest Glade students at the Eastwood Public School site until the new school is built, and then they will all be back in one building. There's been a reduction of 2 social work positions, a reduction of 5 full-time equivalent psychologists, speech language pathologists, and communicative disorder assistant positions. There's been some restructuring of supports for students participating in the RISE program. There is restructuring of supports for part-time school aides, and the elimination of the Joint Employee Assistance Program effective August 31st, and a consolidation of our employee assistance programs into one plan provider. The 25-26 budget focuses on 4 key priorities: Indigenous education, student mental health and well-being, literacy and numeracy, justice, inclusion, equity, and diversity. And details on those priorities and how they are reflected in the budget can be found on page 19 in your budget package. I'm getting close. This slide provides you with a summary of the 25-26 revenues along with a comparison to the prior year's original budget. And this is where I've explained what makes this budget complex. Core education funding is projected to increase by $40.5 million despite the declining enrollment. The increase is primarily attributable to the salary and benefit benchmark increases in core education funding due to the Bill 124 settlement and the collective agreement increases. Responsive education programs funding has increased primarily due to the timing of the announcement of the funding allocations. There were 2 more allocations that were announced earlier than when we did the budget this time last year. Those 2 being the graduation coach for Black students and the transportation stability supports for children and youth in care. So that's the difference right there, just timing. And the decrease in other revenues is primarily due to provisions for the Bill 124 remedies, which were recognized in the prior year's budget as other revenues based on instructions from the ministry. This year, all the salary and benefits benchmarks have been updated, and they're all now reflected in their respective categories and lines. This slide provides you with a high level of expenses. Again, salaries and benefits are the largest expense of the board. They represent approximately 80% of the board's overall expenses. The increases in instructional and administration are largely due to the changes in the salaries and benefits due to the arbitrated settlement of the Bill 124 and the collective agreement. All groups, except for the director and supervisory officers, have been impacted by these changes. Student transportation reflects the impact of the 2025-26 bus operators' contract rate increases. It's offset by student enrollment, which has had impacts on student routing and other routing efficiencies that have been achieved by WESTS. Pupil accommodation expenses are projected to decrease by $1.9 million. This is primarily due to staffing reductions and changes in facility services. the elimination of the carbon tax on our natural gas purchases, and other non-salary reductions. And then the infamous other category, those expenses have decreased by $27 million, and that's due to provisions again that were included for Bill 124 and for other labor items where the ministry required that we reported it that way in 24-25. And again, all of that's now reflected in the respective categories within the lines of the budget. Then I'll finally just finish this budget, this presentation off with a quick look at our capital budget. So this is a summary of what we call the BERS funding, building, expanding, renewing schools, that is available for 25-26. It includes any carryover funding from prior years that we are able to use in 25-26. It should be noted that the board will be receiving $1.5 million less in school condition improvement funding than in the prior year. And as I mentioned before, the ministry's been fairly clear on how school boards are supposed to be prioritizing their spending with school condition improvement and school renewal allocation funding. And so, of course, we will do so. This information will have to be posted on the board's website once the budget has been published. And with that, my sweet Sophie, because she always has to make an appearance, I'd be happy to answer any questions along with Director Houston and Mr. Mayhew. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Armstrong. And I just realized this is not yet on the floor, so if I can have a mover and a seconder. Moved by Trustee Chin, seconded by myself. And are there any questions from trustees? Trustee Chin?
Oh, thank you, Chair. And my question is that it's regarding the DEI. I mentioned it before, and I think we still have a lot of budget which is unfunded. I'm wondering, based on what I know from the consultation, that many people have complaints regarding spending a lot of monies on DEI, this item, and also from the provincial government, Bill 33 has mentioned that we should diminish the spending on DEI and focus more on the basic knowledge achievements. So I wonder how we respond to these changes, and how do we reflect the opinions from the communities and from the provincial government by this budget plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Chin. Senior Administration. Director Houston.
So through you, Chair, and Superintendent Armstrong can add anything if she... I'm not sure that I actually saw that in Bill 33, but I'd be happy to go back and reference it. And I would say that we can't eliminate all of our DEI funding that we've put into the budget. We did a student census that you would be aware of that clearly outlined that racialized and marginalized students have needs that aren't being met. We've committed to a 5-year dismantling anti-Black racism strategy to our community, and we're not going to. The Ontario Human Rights Commission has just released around Black students in education with several priorities that school boards will be required to meet. And as the director, I don't support reducing or not doing diversity, equity, and inclusion to support all of our children.
Thank you, Director Houston. Trustee Hatfield, did you have a question?
Yeah, I have some questions. Are you going to go like one at a time, or I just ask?
Yeah, we can flip-flop.
Okay, I just have a few questions for this meeting. I have others that I can send in, but there's some that I wanted to ask just for clarification. So on page 47, under, by the way, that was a great presentation. Before I forget to say that, I and I thought that the presentation in the binder, as well as what you did today, really addressed the risks and the problem areas that we need to address, and I found it very well done. Thank you. You guys too. So on page 47 under administration, there's a category for rent, and I wasn't sure what we're renting.
To you, Mr. Chair, we lease space for in Amherstburg for the public for pass program.
Oh, right.
We also lease space for the enhanced construction program. We lease space in Leamington also for a pass program.
Okay.
And the Newcomer Welcome Center also has lease space on Olette.
Okay. Thank you.
Just to add to that, through you, Mr. Chair, the reason why there's no rent amounts in the prior year is because we reclassified the rents under the administration line. They were previously in supply and tech, so some of those rents still existed last year. It's not new items. We've just moved them.
Yeah, I noticed some other things too that have been reallocated between lines, so that helps to explain that one too. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Trustee Chin.
Thank you. And on page 15, there is analysis about the factors of the decrease of the enrollment, and there is a factor that a growing number of families are electing to enroll their children in private schools. And I agree with this. This is important. And also, I think another is to move to a separate school is also a factor. And I'm wondering, since we know these are the reasons of decreasing enrollment number, what action should we take to avoid that and to increase the enrollment? Because there should be a reason that the children move to private schools and also move to separate school boards. Thank you.
Through the chair, the reference to private schools is just one of several reasons that could be attributing to the declining enrollment. So I just wanted to point that out. I think it's also important to recognize that while this is based on enrollment that we currently know at this time, it is not uncommon, and we've seen this happen year after year where families enroll their children late, later in the summertime or during the first day of school. So I think we do have some degree of confidence is the right word, but we do expect that these enrollment levels will increase. And if the only other thing perhaps that I might add is that I think I just lost my train of thought. I just lost my train of thought. Okay, it'll come to me. Give me a second.
Thank you, Superintendent Armstrong. Trustee.
Sorry, we're actively advertising through social media and through other means about come and join Greater Essex County District School Board. I've seen those advertisements. So we're not doing that advertising just at JK registration time. We are doing active advertising to promote the school board. Thank you. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Thank you. And I appreciate your explanation. And I heard that many parents, they are not very satisfied with our board regarding those DEI issues, and they don't like their kids to be.
Sorry, Trustee Chin,
trained.
The question of DEI was already asked and answered by Senior
Oh,
Admin.
yes, but this is another question regarding the decreasing the decreasing number. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
And yeah, I think we have already known this is a reason, and compared with our board with the separate school board, and this
Sorry,
has
Trustee Chin,
been.
is there a question?
Yes, this is a question. I think this phenomena, compared with two boards, they are increasing their, registration, and compared with them, our is lower. So I want.
So,
And
sorry,
considering those factors like the consultation and the parents do have the concerns regarding this aspect, and
Trustee Chin, sorry, just one more time.
I just don't
Just
know.
a question.
I have a question.
Okay, go
I
ahead.
don't know why we still think that we should spend all this large amount of money on DEI while we have no enough money fundings on the special education and other education, and why we still insisted on doing this, and is there any factor to support it? Because both from the provincial level
Trustee Chin,
and from the
I'm going to let Superintendent Armstrong answer your question, and then we'll go from there, okay?
okay.
Thank you. I just want to clarify that from a special education perspective, we're spending over $70 million of our budget to support those students. And what we're proposing in this budget is to spend $1 million, to be exact, $1,037,052 to support students that are Black, to support students that are marginalized, because we value every student that crosses our doors, and we want to make sure that they have a great learning experience and feel welcomed and included in our schools. So I appreciate your comments. I respect your position, but I just want to clarify that we're talking about $1 million relative to $70 million that we're spending for students with special education needs.
Supplemental.
Okay, quickly.
Yeah, I appreciate, but we do have insufficient funding. There are so much, and most of the categories we kind of decrease those budget, but the only one we increased is on DEI, and the DEI. Hold on a second.
It was decreased. I believe it was like $1.2 million last year, and it's $776, so it's actually $500,000 lower than the prior year.
Hold on a second. Page 26. Yeah, on page 26, we have funding gap that is $776,152 on the GECD initiatives, right? And yes, I'm just over here on page 31. On page 31, graduation coach programs for Black students, we have 260,900. The previous year is 226,404.
So just to be clear, Trustee Chin, those are REP allocations, which are a different budget item.
I mean, yeah.
That's explicitly funded by the Ministry of Education.
And it's higher. It's higher because the salary and benefit benchmarks increased.
So that's not related to the JIED initiatives that you're talking about on page 26.
So the overall, I just don't quite, I'm not confirmed why we should spend, our priority on this.
So sorry,
instead
I'm just
of
going
the
to stop right there, Trustee Chin, just in the interest of time. But I will note that on your question of why, because it's in line with the board's strategic priorities as it relates to student success and well-being.
Yeah, my question
So,
is that
yeah.
we have consultation and we have the provincial government bills, and why do we still insisted on? And we are not updating anything on the strategy. The strategy priority, it was several years ago. It was set several years ago, but now several years passed, and we did consultation several times, and it was a concern from the public. So why we insisted on this, and based on our performance, we are not benefit from that.
So our strategic priorities are still active for this year, 2025-26.
Yeah,
so it still reflects
what,
student success and well-being. JIED initiatives are part of that, Trustee Chin, and I think your question has been asked and answered. So respectfully, I'm going to move on and see if Trustee Hatfield has any questions as it relates to the budget.
Okay.
Thank you. So on page 60 under special education programs, I was really interested in the remediation hubs. And it says that in 2025-26, the board will be introducing 5 remediation hubs. And then you list 3 locations. So are the other 2 secondary or?
Through you, Mr. Chair, some of those schools are getting more than 1 room.
Oh,
Of the
okay.
schools that are listed.
Okay, I wasn't sure about that, but supplemental to that. So is this helping to address the elimination of the RISE program?
No.
No.
It is not a substitute for a RISE program.
Well, not a substitute. Is it helping to address the concerns?
It's a piece of it, but a very small piece. The intent is not for students that were in the RISE program to now go into the hub room. It's very specific around empowering students, around self-regulation, around going, and there's different centers within that room to skill build to bring those back to their homeroom classrooms. It's not meant for a half a day release. It's meant for a very small period of time and not every single day. It's when they need a place to go and then back to their regular classroom with the strategies they learned in the hub.
Great. Thank you.
And you'll see it reflected in the spec ed plan.
Great. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Austin. Trustee Chin, another question?
Yes, regarding the tracks, track and fields in Massey School, I saw somewhere regarding another school, the track. I wonder what's the situation now for the track and fields, and is there any budget planning for that, or how can we, process it? Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the board will be providing a detailed update on the board's website with respect to how it's using school condition improvement and school renewal allocation funding. I just want to remind everyone that we have $538 million of deferred maintenance, and so we will be focusing that funding specifically on the schools and on our buildings. However, we may be doing some investment in the track at Riverside, but that would be the only track that we would be contemplating in 25-26.
Did you have a supplemental or a new question?
Yes, supplemental.
Okay.
And regarding the Massey School track, so what are we going to do? We just, put it there, or we destroy it and exchange to the lawn?
Just to clarify, Trustee Chin, nobody is destroying tracks. Tracks just become outdated as students use them throughout time. And I think we addressed this at our last Finance and Facility Services meeting. The community is more than welcome to come together, you as the area trustee for Massey, to come up with some sort of initiatives to fund track improvements. But I believe Superintendent Armstrong has already noted that those aren't funded by the ministry. Those come out of our surplus, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct. It would be at this time, unless the community is going to come forward with a fulsome plan, detailed plan on how they're able to remediate the track. The intention would be that we would at least be grassing it over and making it safe, because right now those areas are not considered safe for anyone to be near.
Supplemental?
About the track?
Yes.
Okay.
I heard that the city wants to help with rebuilding the track, and if we destroy it,
Sorry, Trustee Chin, nobody is destroying tracks.
I mean, did we consider all the available opportunities to keep the track of the school? Because I think it's very important. And my question is also why you consider the Riverside school track to keep that, and you give up the track in the Massey school.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. First of all, any conversations the board may or may not have had with any proponents is a matter of potentially negotiations. That is not something that I would be prepared to discuss here. I would suggest that no group has come forward offering to pay or to fund the rebuilding of those tracks that were temporarily closed because of safety issues. Riverside Secondary School already has a good track facility. The funds that we would be considering spending to improve that track would be related to adding washrooms outside or grandstands for students to be sitting on, not actually rebuilding the track, but making it more welcoming so that our other elementary schools and our other high schools can make use of the facilities along with the community.
Thank you. I'm just going to move on to Trustee Hatfield for a question, just in the interest of time.
Thank you. This might be a really dumb question because I probably should know the answer, but I don't. What do we mean on page 64 that the ministry has approved full-day kindergarten funding for 3 schools? I don't know what that means.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. When we got capital priority funding from the ministry to either build schools or to put additions in, the capital funding is broken out in specific categories. So in the case of Erie Migration District School, there was a kindergarten area that was created, obviously, in the elementary side. That project's not financially closed yet. From a ministry perspective, we're still getting final invoices in. That's why we still show it here. At Queen Elizabeth Public School, we actually are putting an addition on where the kindergarten rooms are moving into the new addition, and we are repurposing the kindergarten rooms, the former kindergarten rooms, for other classrooms. So when it's making reference to that, it's because there was capital money for that specifically.
Are there any other questions from Trustee? Yeah, Trustee Chin.
Thank you. On page 64, school condition improvement, and for 2025 and 26, the ministry will continue to invest almost 1.4 billion to maintain and improve the condition of schools through the school condition improvement program to address the significant backlog in school renewal needs. And we do have 1.4 billion funding. And I also contacted the MPP, and I got confirmed that the track actually is funded. It's not, on the name of the track, but it was included on the fundings from the provincial level to the school board. So I'm
just going to let Superintendent Armstrong answer that, and then
okay.
Trustee Hatfield, and then we'll wrap it up and call the vote on this. Okay.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. The province may be funding 1.4 billion. The board's only getting 18 million, which is $1.5 million less than last year for school condition improvement funding. And if you refer to pages 65 and 66 in your binder, that outlines the capital projects that the board intends to use at school condition improvement and school renewal funding, including any unused money from the prior year. And if you'll note, there's a lot of items on here that I think are really important for our staff and our students, including roofing, exterior doors, masonry, HVAC, electrical, infill of open areas, so kids aren't in open spaces. They have an actual enclosed classroom to learn from. washroom upgrades. So I think when we look at that list and we look at the fact that there's $538 million of deferred maintenance, while we would like to repair every track and have all of these amenities at our school, the reality is that it's simply not practical or reasonable based on what we do need to fix.
Thank you, Superintendent Armstrong. And then, sorry, trustee changes because we do have our special board meeting at 6. So I'll give the last question to trustee Hatfield, and then we'll call the vote on this.
Thank you. So I may have other questions, but I'll send them in. So the only thing I wanted to clarify, so I'm sure that I understand this, is the situation at Forest Glade Elementary School and the Primary Learning Center. So am I correct that now that we've eliminated French immersion, there's that opens up space, and so that's why we're able to consolidate, so that the old school that they're using, Eastwood, so that's big enough to accommodate, or do we need portables as well?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, we will need to put portables temporarily at Eastwood for the 1 year when those students move over. However, when the students move back to the brand new Forest Glade Public School in September 2026, all students from JK to 8 will be housed in one building.
Thank you for clarifying that. And we don't expect, and we don't expect to need portables? Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Superintendent Armstrong, for answering all those questions. And just a reminder to all trustees that hopefully this will come before Committee of the Whole on June 17th. And if everybody can submit their questions to Mr. Mayhew no later than noon on Monday, June 16th, so that they have time to prepare the answers for you. So with that in mind, calling the vote, all those in favor, and again, this is just a recommendation that this goes before the whole board. Okay. And that carries. Moving on to item I2, Ontarians with Disabilities Act 2526 plan. The recommendation is that the Finance and Facility Services Committee recommend to the board that the board approve the 2526 plan in accordance with the Ontarians with Disabilities Act for the year September 2025 to August 2026. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by trustee Hatfield, seconded by myself. Any questions on that? No? Okay, calling the vote. All those in favor? That's for the Ontarians with Disabilities Act. It's pages 112 to 117. Did you have a question for the senior team about that? No? Okay. Call on the vote. All those in favor? And that carries. Item J, trustee motions for consideration. There was none at the time of agenda prep. To item K, trustee notices of motion. Also none at the time of agenda prep. And with that in mind, we are adjourned at 5:58. Thank you, everybody.
I'd like to call this special public meeting to order. With regard to attendance, we have 2 trustees that are absent, Trustee Leclerc and Trustee Cook, and the student trustees. I need an approval of the agenda. Trustee McCowie, Trustee Nelson, all those in support? Any opposed to the agenda? No? Okay. That's carried. Thank you. Trustee McCowie, I would invite you to do the land acknowledgement, please.
Thank you, Trustee Hatfield. We acknowledge that we are on land and surrounded by water, originally inhabited by the indigenous peoples who have traveled this area since time immemorial. This territory is within the lands honored by the Wampum Treaties, agreements between the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Lenape, and allied nations to peacefully share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. Specifically, we would like to acknowledge the presence of the Huron-Wendat peoples in the Three Fires Confederacy, Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture while remaining committed to moving forward respectfully with all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis.
Thank you. This special meeting does have 2 items of new business. D1 is the investigator's final report regarding code of conduct complaints alleging breaches. The first one is regarding Trustee Cook. The second one is regarding Trustee Armstrong. I would like to give a bit of background so that everybody understands the purpose of the special meeting and what we're doing tonight, because this isn't a typical board meeting. So last year on June 4th, the board passed a motion to appoint an investigator in accordance with the board's trustee code of conduct to investigate the conduct of Trustee Kathy Cook in relation to and arising out of a special public meeting that was held on April 2nd, 2024. And in September of 2024, the board passed another motion to appoint an investigator in accordance with the board's trustee code of conduct to investigate the conduct of Trustee Nancy Armstrong in relation to and or arising out of her appearance on That Kingsville podcast, published on YouTube on August 3rd, 2024. The same investigator was asked to conduct both investigations. The investigation of the 2 complaints were connected in that both were directly related to the naming of a school. Therefore, the investigator recommended that the 2 reports be issued at the same time. And we have those reports now. And tonight, the board is considering the Reuben Tomlinson investigation reports dated April 17th, 2025, regarding the conduct of Trustee Kathy Cook, and dated April 21st, 2025, regarding the conduct of Trustee Nancy Armstrong, pursuant to the board's trustee code of conduct. The responsibility of the trustees tonight is that they must decide whether the code has been breached, and if so, whether it will impose any sanction or sanctions for such breaches. The investigation reports will be considered separately, and the code enforcement provisions provides that the investigator prepare a final report to the Board of Trustees outlining the finding of facts and a recommendation or opinion as to whether the code has been breached. I will add that we had the reports reviewed to ensure that they could be deliberated in public, and it was found that we didn't meet any of the conditions under Section 51 of the code. And I would just like to remind trustees that because the allegations of breaches were made in 2024, it is that trustee code of conduct that applies, because there were changes after January 1st, 2025. So I wanted to remind you about that. And so the board may accept or reject the investigator's recommendations or opinions as to whether the code has been breached. And any motions regarding a breach or a sanction shall be decided by a vote of at least 2/3 of the trustees who are present and voting. And also in accordance with the Education Act, trustees Cook and trustee Armstrong are not able to vote on any motion that deals with their breaches, but they can vote on the other ones. You know what I'm saying? They can't participate in the deliberations of their own report or vote on any motions that the board may make. And that's about it. I do want to ask, however, because we don't have a lot of experience with making these motions, I wanted to ask if the trustees would object if I give some help tonight guiding the wording of the motions to make sure that we're getting it done properly. Would you accept some assistance if I could with that to make sure that we're getting it the way we need to? Okay. Then with that, we'll turn to the first one, which is pages 1 to 113 in your package. And the first item of business with regard to the report is to determine if there is a breach or no breach. Yeah, Trustee McKinley?
I will move that there was a breach.
Okay. Okay. So we need to be specific. So in the motion, I did send some wording, some suggested wording to you in a heads up last night. Can we refer to that wording? Do you want me to help you with that? You've got, everybody has it. I first point out, Trustee McKinley, I just remembered, there's 2 items under Trustee Cook. First is with regard to her questions during the special meeting of April 2nd. That was dealt with separately. And then there was the media interview following that. So there's 2 matters. So the first one in the report is the meeting. And in the report, you'll find that the investigator, his opinion is that it did not breach the code of conduct. So if we accept that, then we don't have to do any motion on that. If we accept the findings, then we don't need a motion. Okay? Yeah. Right. So now on the second part, well, unless anyone else wants to make a motion with regard to the first part. Right. Okay. So let me just check on the first finding of the remarks that questions that were asked during the meeting of April 2nd. The investigator found that there was no breach of the code. So if we're choosing to accept that, then we don't have to do anything. But I'm asking if there's a trustee who wants to do otherwise. Trustee Burgess?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I will refer to page 25 of the report, our page 29. I guess that's
29, did you
whatever.
say?
There's 2 page numbers on every page. So I'm just referring to section 18, III section 18 of the meeting of April 2nd. Okay, so I have 2 numbers, 29 in red, which I think includes maybe some preamble or maybe the agenda. Okay, and of the report, it would be page 25. So in the motion, I wouldn't put a motion forward. I want to discuss that one section and why I don't think that there is any breach for the meeting of April the 2nd.
If there's no motion, there's nothing to discuss
Well,
on the meeting part.
why wouldn't you let me speak to the finding? Because I take exception to the finding, but I'm not going to suggest a breach. I think it's in order to reject or accept the findings.
Correct.
Correct. So can I say where I think the finding is incorrect?
Okay, then you're not accepting that there was no breach.
No, that's not true. I'm finding that section 18 in the findings refers to, if I could just speak to it and then you can note that I'm commenting that I disagree with part of the findings. That doesn't change my opinion that it doesn't meet the criteria of a breach. Okay?
Okay,
Go ahead.
I'll let you go.
Thank
and
you.
See.
So on page 25 of the report under section 18, because it's repeated several times throughout the report, Trustee Cook did technically leave prior to the adjournment motion. The walking out of a meeting could be found to be contrary to section 18 in present case. Vice Chair Nelson had already announced, albeit prematurely, that this meeting is adjourned. In these circumstances, I would not consider Trustee Cook having walked out as a breach of the code of conduct. So there was a consideration by the investigator that the mere walking out of a meeting that had been declared adjourned, even though the word said, do we need a motion? The business had been concluded. The meeting was declared adjourned. The chair was in order, and so was Trustee Cook if she wanted to leave that very second. So what I'd like to say is I take exception to his conclusion that he thinks that there might be some sort of contrary thing to when a chair declares a motion adjourned. That's quite an order. He thought that there was a missing motion and vote. There wasn't. It was declared adjourned.
No, there was further discussion on the adjournment.
Was there?
Yes, it's in the report.
I didn't see that.
Sorry.
I didn't see that.
That's why he referred to the premature announcement, because then there was a second announcement. That's in here somewhere.
Okay.
I don't have the page.
I completely missed that.
Sorry. Okay. Trustee McKinley, you have a motion?
Moving on to the second part after the meeting.
Yes.
Sorry, I got my mic on.
Okay.
Breach of code of the code in accordance with the GECDSB regulation RGV 06 Trustee Code of Conduct and the applicable sections of the Ontario Education Act as it read immediately prior to January 1st, 2025, and taking into consideration the findings, recommendations, and opinions of the investigator documented in the report dated April 17th, I believe,
Yes.
from Reuben Tomlinson LLP to the Board of Trustees regarding allegations of breaches of the code by Trustee Cook. The GECDSB Board of Trustees finds that Trustee Cook has breached sections. Oh, I don't remember all the numbers. Sorry, I didn't.
6, 14,
Yeah, 6,
23, and 24.
6, 14, 18, 25.
Trustee Cook, no, it's 6, 14, 23, and 25.
Okay.
No, sorry, 23 and 24. 23 and 24.
Okay.
6, 14, 23, and 24.
And 24. Those numbers, the GECDSB Board of Trustees finds that Trustee Cook has breached sections, the numbers of the code for the reasons given by the investigator in the report, which reasons we adopt. I'll put that
Do we
on
have
the
a
floor.
seconder? Trustee Buckler? Would you like to speak to the motion?
Just the motion as to the guilt or not, the conduct. I was thinking I would speak to it more during sanctions, but I'll speak to it now. There's actually something that wasn't in the report that I found curious because it's one of the statements that also bothered me about that, where Trustee Cook also states, I'm here for the right reasons. Some aren't. And that statement really affected me. I felt like, why? What's that about? Like, just to say that blatantly like that, it was very disparaging to all of the rest of us, that I believe I'm here for the right reasons. So to have somebody insinuate that we're not publicly, that hurt. So did all the other statements, quite frankly, were quite surprising. So for that reason, and having read the report a long time later, putting it, you're able to look at it without all the emotion, even though some of the emotion came up while rereading it. That's the reason I bring forward that motion for the violation.
Thank you. Anyone else on the motion? Trustee Burgess?
Thanks, Madam Chair. I want to say that I found it actually traumatic, honestly traumatic, reading this again and going through it and trying to correct it, because the investigations, as these things go back and forth, usually for corrections from the parties. I have to say, though, that when I spoke, and it did mention in this particular report that I was interviewed on October 29th, 2024, I was told that his investigation in this matter had been concluded, and that it wasn't necessary to interrogate or interview me on this matter. So I didn't get a chance to speak to this matter, except in the broadest sense where he sets this up to say they're linked in some way. So I want to say that I support the motion, but there's a lot here that I was never interviewed for. And my colleague has brought up one such comment that is there for everyone to see. Some aren't here for the right reason, etc. This is not a complete findings of this allegation of a breach. There's a lot more that could have been shared had I been interviewed about it. And I say that, I bring it up to you because, ma'am, you sent it off and it came back, and I'm named in it, and I'm named in a permanent way on social media of lots of different platforms that persist to this day. And for 1 year, I have not been able to address it publicly, as my name was brought into question for really disrespectful ways for 1 year. That's not justice served in any way. Not only do I support the motion, I will look forward to the sanctions part, but I bring to your notice, because I wasn't interviewed, so I want to share that on page 18, for example, there's a commentary there that Trustee Cook shares, and it says, "This is just a mess. Trustee Burgess did what she did and got it through." A supermajority of this board supported a naming process and a name. Every meeting was available to be publicly attended, and not only were 2 trustees on the committee, and 2 trustees, and admin and senior admin were present. So that's a very disparaging thing, not only to us, but to staff members as well, but particularly to me, and I wasn't interviewed. Also, the statement that this school does not belong to the board, it doesn't belong to the trustees, it belongs to the community, and that was taken away. That comment fueled and has fueled, and some colleagues persist in the fueling, that somehow the school doesn't belong to the school board, and it does. In thought, word, and deed. So, of course, it's a community school, but that is something that has persisted and has been hailed as true leadership and the truth. It's not. And some things need to be recanted. So that has fueled hurt to me and my family in my community where I live, to the point of threats and my security. I want to make that point because that's not captured in here, and I wasn't interviewed for it. It also says on page 19, 23 of the whole thing, but 19 at the bottom, Trustee Cook also pointed out that during the naming process, Trustee Burgess had always also spoken to the press and given the impression that she was speaking on behalf of the board. I never spoke on behalf of the board, ever. And if she's referring to Globe and Mail or anything else, I only ever spoke as the chair of the naming committee, and I think she's referring to something before a decision maybe was made, and afterwards it would have been to uphold the decision of the board and to offer anything of clarification, and only as the chair of the naming committee, never on behalf of the board. So that also makes it sound like that I had some extraordinary authority that I was speaking on behalf of, and I didn't. And that also creates a lack of confidence in my ability to be a community rep in the area. To this day, the former chair of the school council has this video. A highly influential person, other influential people. It's not just on YouTube, it's been disseminated. And it continues to be lauded as something that we should aspire to. And there's been no recanting, no apology, no couching of any terms. So I support this motion that there's been a breach, but it's an ongoing breach. It's not about April 4th or 2nd or whatever. It's ongoing in that it hasn't been for 1 year fixed. So I offer that. I also want to say that I accept on page 21 that the investigator also accepted the findings in the ombudsman report. And that there have been comments since the ombudsman report came out that somehow, oh, we shouldn't accept the ombudsman report as independent and final and settled. I'm glad to see that in the report. I accept that. I appreciate that. I believe when we get to the second part, like this part here, the media interview, I can't put as much emphasis as I would like to on how hurtful it still remains, and it shouldn't be. I should be able to let it go. I read the book. I can't get there, sorry. Because they remain so, these things remain so in the eyes of the public, and in the absence of any kind of public refutation of any of this, or anything to the contrary, it stands as some sort of correct statement. So to this date, as lately as at the last meeting, a colleague would be able to say some mis and disinformation that somehow the naming and the acronym and the process are still suspect. That's wrong. And not only does it have to stop, it has to be publicly recanted by the person who spoke it. So I support the motion and those sections with enthusiasm.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak on the motion? Trustee Chin?
Thank you, Madam Chair. To my understanding, if someone do something and it's not just come out without anything happened, and we judge it if it breached the code of conduct or not. And actually, there is something happened before, and which might lead to the performance of the trustee. And to my memory, that meeting actually made me mad made me hurt, still feel hurt now, because we are not given the right to speak, and we are not giving the chance to question the name. And I think that lead to the attitude of the.
Are we
Trustee
discussing
Chen?
the meeting or the media
Trustee
interview?
Chen?
Yeah,
Trustee Chen?
I'm discussing that.
Trustee Chen, 1 minute. I would like to clarify what happened at that meeting on April 2nd. It was not a motion to reopen the discussion on the name of the school. That's not,
No,
that's not
no,
what it was.
even the motion,
No.
the new
Let me
name.
finish. Let me finish.
Okay.
In our naming and renaming policy that was in effect, it said in there clearly that for a K to 12 school, the terms to name that school would be academy or district school. That was in our policy. So the motion that was put on the floor was just to change the word academy to district school, because that's what the community asked. They didn't want the word academy. So that's why there was no discussion about the name of the school, because that was not the motion on the floor. Does that help explain
I remember clearly that you even sent email and regarding the name, the reason changing the academy to district school because of the
the acronym? Yes.
Acronym. Yeah, acronym. But we clearly know that after we change that to D, it's even worse. The acronym.
That's an opinion.
This should be discussed.
That's not.
Because the motion, because of the acronym.
I know. I'm trying to get a word in edgewise. Trustee Chin, you may speak on the motion only.
Yes, and I'm trying to say the fact in that meeting what happened, and it made 3 trustees really. You cannot silence me.
No. You are. We're talking about the report of the investigator. We're talking about the report of the investigator, not your opinion of the meeting.
I'm telling the fact.
No, I'm sorry. And if you continue to challenge that, then I'm going to have to ask you to leave for this part of the meeting. So please, you can speak to the investigator's report.
Yes.
Not to your opinion. No, I won't release your mic. No, not until you understand.
Yes, I understand.
I don't think you do. I just want to be sure. You can speak on whether you agree with the investigator or if you don't support the motion that's on the floor. If you don't support the motion on the floor, just say so. But do not get into debate about what you think happened at that meeting. It's documented in the report. And the investigator reviewed the video of our meeting, and it's been documented.
I have other points.
No.
Please open that.
Only if you speak to the motion.
Thank you. And on the report, and the lawyer interviewed 3 persons on page 3, and including Chair Hatfield and Trustee Julia Burgess and Scott Scatterbury, former public relations officers. I think all these 3 persons, support the name, the true choice of the name, while the 3 trustees opposed that was not interviewed at all.
Trustee Chin? Okay, no.
I'm talking about the report. And she mentioned this
She's
also.
questioning the credibility of the investigator.
So she mentioned that
So
who is interviewed or not.
That's a decision of the investigator based on viewing the meeting and viewing the video of the media interview.
Yes, I'm commenting on this.
So Okay.
Yeah, she complained that she was not interviewed enough. But my concerns is that they just interviewed the trustees, supported that, and the trustees, including
Sorry, Trustee Chin, you don't have
Information. Point 4 information, please.
your point.
Thank you. I said on this matter, either one, the meeting or the media interview, I was not interviewed about this allegation of a breach. It happened to be connected. I also acknowledge the Ombudsman's report, which said there were no wrongdoings procedurally at all. So, to clarify what my colleague is referring to, I was not interviewed about this matter.
The director wanted to add.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. I just want to clarify, perhaps for Trustee Chin, the purpose of the investigation was not to investigate the school naming. That's already gone through the Ombudsman. That's already gone through everything. The purpose of the investigation was only to determine whether there was a code of conduct breach by Trustee Cook. That's it. Not the process, not the meeting, not anything. Did Trustee Cook breach the code of conduct? That is all the investigator was responsible for in the scope.
And I would add to that the instruction to the investigator was to view the media interview and then make determinations based on that, not on interviews. So none of us were interviewed because there was no need for it. Trustee Chin, on the motion, do you want to finish up what you were going to say?
As for the ombudsman that you mentioned, the ombudsman didn't really interview, the trustees on both sides.
Trustee Chin, you don't know how the ombudsman conducted their interview, how they did their investigation. You don't have that information. And this board has already received that report, and it's fact now. It's been accepted by the board. So that's not part of the motion. So you need to speak on whether you're supporting the motion of a breach or not.
I'm not supporting because to my understanding, the board breached the policy. And
Trustee Chin, you're really out of order to what's on the floor. Really. We are talking about a motion to accept the investigator's report of breaches on sections 6, 14, 23, and 24. That's what you're allowed to speak on. This is Trustee Cook. The motion on the floor is to support the finding of a breach of the Code of Conduct, sections 16, 14, 23, and 24. So I'm going to move on to see if anybody else wants to speak on the motion. How do we get that off? Anyone else? On the motion?
Yes, on the report.
No, on the motion. Do you want to speak to the motion that's on the floor? No. I'm going to move on.
I have something to speak on the motion.
On the motion?
Yes.
Okay.
And on page 14 and page 15.5, and it mentioned that Trustee Burgess would bring a motion to refer the naming and renaming policy and regulation back to the policy committee for consideration and review to address shortcomings in the process, which had emerged during the recent consultations. And this paragraph, and based on this paragraph, after that, the policy committee didn't really, do what.
Trustee Chin, please. You're not speaking to the motion. So I'm moving on. I'm moving on.
I'm really taking offense that we just delivered the policy committee.
Yes.
Just delivered
Yes.
the naming committee policy and regulation,
Mm-hmm.
and this board approved it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Please,
Right.
please bring that to the attention of my colleague who is saying the policy committee really didn't do that. Madam Chair of the policy committee, I think we did that.
So after this was done, the naming of the new school was done. I don't know how to get her. I gotta hold it down. Sorry about the dinging. So just for clarification, for everybody to understand, after the naming of the school was completed, there was a motion to refer the policy committee for review, and the policy committee came forward with some recommendations that helped to clarify everybody's role in the naming process, and that was received and adopted by the board. Thank you. So now, I don't know how to turn my mic off. Anyone else to speak on the motion that's on the floor? Trustee Armstrong?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. The motion is, could you repeat it, please? Short version.
The Board of Trustees, regarding the allegations of breaches of the code by Trustee Cook, the GECDSB Board of Trustees finds that Trustee Cook has breached sections 6, 14, 23, and 24 of the code for the reasons given by the investigator in the report, which reasons we adopt.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, I'm going to, I don't know what the term is. I'm not going to vote on this. I'm not going to support it or not support it, simply because I am tied to this as well. I left with her. Abstain. Thank you.
Anyone else on the motion before I call the question on the motion? Yep. Trustee McCauley?
I just have a question. Does this motion requires 2/3?
Just working on the 2/3 vote.
Please check how an abstention is counted.
Pardon?
Please check if you could, Madam Chair, procedurally, if an abstention, how it is counted to the affirmative or the negative.
I believe it goes to the affirmative.
Excuse me, I call recorded vote.
We're going to call for a 2-minute recess while we figure this out. Thank you.
Yep. Recess 5 minutes.
If it's causing a problem, I will just vote.
Sure. Will be 6. Okay. Pardon? So, all those in support of the finding of a breach in the matter of Trustee Cook with regard to the media interview?
I ask for the recorded
know.
vote.
I know.
Yeah.
All
Mhm.
those in support of the, could you please raise your hands? Nelson, McKinley, Buckler, Hatfield. The breach. To support the motion for a breach. McCowie and Burgess. All those opposed. Trustee Chin and Trustee Armstrong. The motion's carried. Now, we move. Pardon?
You vote in support.
Yeah, I called my name.
Oh, I didn't hear you.
Yeah. Okay. Are we clear on what we just did? Okay. Let me know if you're not. So, there's been a finding of the breach of section 614, 23, and 24 by Trustee Cook. So now we're moving on to the sanctions. Trustee McCowie?
Does the sanctions also require 2/3? Or just majority?
Yes,
Yep. Yeah. Okay.
I believe so. Let me check. Give me a minute. I think it's both. I'm pretty sure in my opening remarks I said, sorry.
Excuse me, I ask for recorded vote for all the vote today. Okay, but give me time. Sometimes I'm not very respond quickly. So I need to do that. Give me time or remind me. Thank you.
So, just to remind you about the sanctions, it's in our policy. I sent that in the guideline last night. So we're now open to whether or not you want to consider sanctions. Trustee Burgess?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for allowing me to speak to the original motion and for allowing you to speak to the sanctions. You will remember, Madam Chair, when this was brought up over a year ago, because it was immediately apparent to me that there was a breach. That not only one or two, it was obvious. So it went forward as a board investigation rather than an individual, and that's stated in here. But I specifically requested, because I was named, continue to be named, continue to be pilloried, continue to suffer the most egregious kind of things from the complete misinformation and disinformation that has been shared and is still on record. I requested restorative justice. I think that I'm going to ask that again. It's only a request. A request is just that. It was attempted once. I think with maybe sober second thought, there might be some uptake. I don't know. But in order to actually get to the kernel of the problem and why, because reading the report, I didn't still get a whole lot of remorse or change. And I feel that there's a lesson learned, but there needs to be some restoration involved in the sanction. It's not just a censure or keeping somebody away or whatever. I have to think that because the introduction of it's like somebody going to a christening or a name dedication or a or whatever, and somebody bad mouthing a kid's name. There has to be some restoration to the process. So I think the person who has breached, we found a breach, has to restore that in some way. So some restorative justice process where we can air what was done and to own it, and so that the public can see and hear that what was said and done was in error and in hindsight and with some reflection, that if they could take it back, they would. And that everybody should be proud of the process and accept the Ombudsman report and accept the findings of this report and accept that 2/3 of the board voted correctly for a name. That should have been embraced well and wasn't, because of this kind of media interview and lots of other social media posts that it was distributed with. So I don't have a motion prepared. I know that there were some options given. I do believe that we should censure for disparaging comments, and I would entertain putting a motion together for sanctions about censuring and saying that we are disappointed.
Trustee Burgess, on that, on the motion to censure, I was thinking along the same lines, and I'd like to put a motion forward.
Okay,
With
I have
regard
some
to
other
censure.
comments, but I'll let you
Thank you.
take them there.
So censure is one option, and the board is free to do one or more sanctions. I would like to propose a motion of censure, and this is, again, something new for us. So I did spend some time thinking about it, and I agree that it's needed. So this is the motion that I would put forward. So I move that the Board of Trustees censure Trustee Cook for her conduct during the April 2nd, 2024 media interview she participated in immediately following the special board meeting on that date. On this occasion, Trustee Cook breached Section 6, 14, 23, and 24 of the Trustee Code of Conduct through the statement she made during the media interview as determined by the investigator in the report of Reuben Tomlinson, LLP, and for the reasons given by the investigator in the report, which reasons we adopt. Trustee Cook's remarks to the media were personal, demeaning, and disparaging of her fellow trustees and the board. Furthermore, Trustee Cook failed to act in a manner that would support public confidence in the abilities and integrity of Trustee Burgess and the board. I have a seconder.
I have to chair this part. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Trustee Burgess? Any comments on it? Trustee McKinley?
Just for clarification, this was only for a censure, not for any additional sanctions? Okay, so there may be more parts. I wasn't sure if they were all going to be in the same motion. Okay, so that's not the only action then. Okay, that was
That would be up to the trustees.
That's my clarification. Thank you.
Any further questions? Trustee Burgess?
Sorry, Madam Chair. Are we doing it by sections? Because I support the censure, but I also support other actions, other sanctions.
I understand that we can do that in the second motion.
Okay.
So all in support of the motion from our chair, Hatfield, to censure.
Yeah, recorder of the vote. Thank you.
Thank you. All in support. Trustee Nelson, Trustee McKinley, Trustee Buckler, Trustee Hatfield, Trustee Burgess, Trustee McCowie. We have 2/3. Thank you.
You didn't ask who opposed it.
The two that weren't noted were opposing it. That's Trustee Chin and Trustee Armstrong.
I think based on the
Okay,
procedure,
are
you
there
need to
any other matters? Trustee Burgess?
So you said you would help us form some motions? You said you would help us form some motions, so I'm hoping you can help with that. So one of the sanctions I would like to see is the restorative justice, the request for restorative justice practice, and that I would be included in that, and anybody else or whatever, but to have that facilitated so that we could actually work through it and find some justice. That would be one. It's more than a censure, it's actually some remediation to it.
And that's allowed. I mean, that's one of the provisions under the...
So I would move that we
policy.
enter into a restorative justice, that a restorative justice practice facilitation be requested of Trustee Cook, that it includes at least Trustee Burgess, perhaps other members of the committee, Trustee McKinley, and anybody else who wants to participate that felt disparaged or demeaned.
Do we have a seconder for the motion? Trustee Buckler, did you want to speak further? Trustee Burgess?
Just that I've always believed in restorative justice. It is one of the remedies of an informal process as well as a formal, and that I think that had it been accepted as a process last year when it was fresh and extremely angry, there would have been a lot less trauma and sequela arising from that. We actually could have had a better uptake of acceptance of the name and less misinformation and just stuff going out there. So I think that it's important to understand what the facts are and how to remediate it.
Trustee Chin, you have a question on the motion?
Yes, I don't know what can we do as the kind of remediate. And my question is that obviously the community has a lot of dissatisfaction, and they feel hurt. And how can we remedy to the community when they feel
Trustee
bad
Chin?
with the names?
Trustee Chin? I can't get this down. We're dealing with the Board of Trustees. We're dealing with the Code of Conduct complaint. We're not talking about the community. So you need to speak to the motion. The motion is with regard to a restorative justice practice among the board. So unless you're going to speak to that, you're out of order. Okay. Don't even mention the community in your remarks. It's not part of this. That's not part of the motion. So please.
Thank you. I oppose that, because I think we as public elected official, and our performance actually cause
Okay. Sorry. No, Trustee Chin, no, you're done. You're not speaking to the motion. Anyone else? I have a question for Trustee Burgess. Okay. My question, please, because I didn't write it down. So is your motion to invite Trustee Cook to participate in a restorative justice process? And what if that's not accepted? So I need that explained. And I don't know if any of the trustees need to hear about what a restorative justice practice would look like, and I don't know if the director could help us with that, to describe it, please. Thank you.
For clarification, since you asked me, my motion was to request Trustee Cook on behalf of the board. It's not me. Motion, I hope the board will support it. That the board requests that Trustee Cook enter into a facilitated restorative justice sessions about this matter. That includes not only her, I'll name myself, I'll name the other trustee, McKinley, because the naming committee was disparaged, and anyone else who wants to participate in that to help resolve and find some justice and remediation for the damage and the disparaging remarks.
I understand that.
And the answer to your question is you can't force anybody into a discussion. But so I'm going to leave the motion the way it was. My understanding of the process is if another no comes forward and says, no, I'm not going to do that, well, then, you can't force anyone. But I think if it's supported by the board, the request comes from the board and not an individual as it was prior. They may want to air that out as a board and clear the air.
Thank you. Not trustee. You don't ever want to be a trustee. Ms. LaBeouf, you have a question?
I just want to make sure I have this accurate. Yes. So restorative practice facilitation be requested of Trustee Cook and include at least Trustee Burgess and McKinley and anyone else who wants to participate.
And for clarification, I would like the director to explain what restorative justice would look like at this board.
So through you, Madam Chair, it's a session or sessions, as Trustee Burgess alluded to, that's facilitated by somebody who's trained in restorative practices to repair the harm for any of the victims, as well as the offenders, to work towards healing.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak on the motion? Can I go to Trustee McCowie first? Okay.
I just have two questions of clarification, either to the director or Trustee Burgess. So this restorative justice workshop, there'd be a cost component to the board.
The cost would be for the facilitator.
Right.
And I don't think we'd have to rent space. We'd find space, but I think it's just for the facilitator.
And then
they are trained.
Right. Yeah.
Facilitators. Yeah.
If the board adopts this resolution for restorative justice, sorry if you already answered this, but I'm still not clear. Is it binding to Trustee Cook? What if she?
No, it's an invitation to participate.
Okay.
And we would explain the reasons why.
Right.
As the director just explained, and then it would be up to Trustee Cook
whether or not
to respond.
Thank you.
Okay. Trustee Burgess.
Just on the wording as it has been captured, if I could just add the words any other members of the board or who are involved. It's just not anybody.
Board of Trustees.
Yeah. I don't know if Madame LaBeouf, if you caught that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Chin on the motion.
Yes, thank you. I don't think we need to. We just have a budget meeting. We have limited budget. I don't think we should put money on that to debate who is wrong, who is correct, and who was hurt, who was not. I think if it passed, it's passed, and there is no need to remind it and to debate that, to make controversy on this issue. And we already sanctioned her, and I think that's enough. And the trustees already got kind of healing, and And to be honest, I feel I'm hurt and I was not healed. So I don't want this debate to waste the public budget to on that, and allow all the senior administrations secretaries, they are busy. They don't have time to arrange all this. If we passed, it passed. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. The cost would be minimal, probably less than $1,000, like maybe a couple $100.
Even less,
Okay.
less,
Point
1,000
for
is still
information.
allowed, I think.
Yes, your point,
It's a
Trustee
point for
Burgess.
information. We have paid. We
Mhm.
continue to pay for this.
Mhm.
We pay in heartache.
Mhm.
We pay in mental health. We pay in paying for your own security.
Mhm.
We already pay. How would we like to pay? So collectively, we have made a decision that we have found someone in breach. And now we are collectively deciding how to remediate and help
Thank you.
mitigate. We are going to pay. I suggest people support this. It's a healing way to do things.
On the motion,
Yeah.
anyone else on the motion? No. Trustee Chin, you have something new to add?
Yes, I think all this controversy should have been avoided from the beginning. And when we started this controversy, we should have the preparation about the, what will be. And when people are in hot, temper to debate, and there is no right and wrong. It's just different opinions. So you feel hurt, other people also feel hurt. I feel hurt also. And I don't think we need to continue this kind of waste and debate. Thank you.
Thank you. On the motion for restorative justice in the matter of Trustee Cook's findings of breaches, all those in support. Trustee Nelson, McKinley, Buckler, Hatfield, Burgess, and McCowie. Those opposed to restorative justice, Armstrong and Chin. Thank you. That passes. Are there any other matters? Trustee Burgess?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we don't know whether restorative justice will happen. We do know that there would be a censure that is shared. And Trustee Cook has an opportunity to respond. And so we'll see how that goes. The other thing that I want, and I think that is fitting, because the Windsor Star YouTube has been shared so broadly. You can see on it how many times it has been shared, but what you have to do is follow the links of where it was shared, and then how many times it was shared from that site, and how it was put on areas where it sabotaged what could have been a very good, bright, fresh new name for a school and a process that the Ombudsman found with no wrongdoing. So I would like Trustee Cook to enter a comment on that site, to enter into a discussion with the Windsor Star, who has that domain of the YouTube, and to enter something on there to mitigate some of the other damaging comments. I think comments are turned off the last time I looked, but they can open them up. So I would like that site, which is the primary site that keeps getting shared, so that there's something on there that Trustee Cook says, on reflection, in hindsight, I was acting, however she wants to put it, hot-headedly or without all the facts. I hadn't attended the previous meeting. Now that the Ombudsman report has been finalized, I see something different. However the wording is, I think that my motion is that Trustee Cook enter a comment with the aid of the Windsor Star on their YouTube page, apologizing for disparaging fellow trustees. Yes. My comment would be for Trustee Cook to enter a comment with the aid of the Windsor Star on their YouTube page, apologizing for disparaging fellow trustees.
Is there a seconder for that motion? Seeing none.
Okay,
Thank you.
I have another one.
Okay. I just want to read a bit of the policy here, if I might, for clarification. So with regard to sanctions, you have the standard options of a censure, which we've done, barring the trustee from attending all or parts of meetings, board meetings or committee meetings, or barring the member from sitting on one or more committees of the board. But it goes on to say that the board shall not impose a sanction which is more onerous than the above, but may impose one that is less onerous, such as a warning or a requirement that the trustee successfully complete specified professional development courses at the expense of the board. I would suggest that we be realistic about our sanctions, and that we follow this as in the policy. I'm not going to speak to the motion, but because it hasn't been seconded, so we're going to move on. But I just wanted to refresh trustees on the part of the policy with regard to sanctions. Trustee McCowie?
I'd like to introduce a motion, and I don't know if there will be support on it or not. If it is seconded, I'd like to speak to it first. But as it relates to barring the member from sitting on one or more committees of the board for a period of time specified by the board, Trustee Cook does sit on the Student Discipline and Appeals Committee, so I would move that should be barred from sitting on that committee.
You would have to explain for what reason. How is that related?
Isn't that only when it's on the floor, like seconded, or could I explain right now?
You would have to explain in your motion.
Oh, okay. Oh, does it have to be related to the Code of Conduct complaint? Okay, then.
It should be, otherwise it's just punitive.
Fair.
And
I withdraw my motion.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Burgess, you had something else?
I doubt it'll find support, but maybe during the restorative justice, if it's taken up, it would find something. I would suggest to Trustee Cook to secure removal or an additional commentary on all inaccurate and disparaging entries in social media. No, but there are some, as I said, that are very well recognized and have been shared and have had hundreds and hundreds of comments on. So my motion is to have Trustee Cook secure removal or an additional commentary on all inaccurate or disparaging entries on social media. You can't, it's an impossibility to get all, but there are some that remain in the community that are.
Trustee Burgess, I certainly understand where you're coming from, because there's lots out there, but we'll need a seconder. And no, there's no seconder. Trustee Burgess, anything else? Oh, Trustee McKinley had something? Sorry.
I guess I was thinking as far as sanctions for banning, for sanctions for banning from meetings.
Oh, okay.
As we did last year with the Code of Conduct around Trustee Chen, to be, I guess, fair to what precedent we set before, that maybe that's where we start for this, for sanctions as far as barring from meetings, based on there were 4 violations of our code. I believe last year for Trustee Chen there was 4, but because it was running into an organization meeting, we made it 3. Am I correct in that memory, Melissa, or do you remember?
I would caution about trying to compare one to the other. I don't think that's fair or reasonable, that you need to take the report on its own merits. And there have been sanctions imposed already, so we've done a censure, which is a formal sanction. We've done requests for restorative justice, which is part of a formal sanction. So if you're proposing further sanctions, you need to make a motion. So do you have a motion?
Just thinking, I wasn't thinking of making something specific right now.
But that's where we are in the meeting. We're dealing with sanctions. So Trustee
I get it.
Trustee Chin on the sanctions.
Yes, just to clarify with Trustee Maclean, and that time I was sanctioned till the end of the session. That means till 2026, the end of the till next election. That's what I was sanctioned. I leave it to you to judge if it's punitive or not, if it is fair or not to me. I leave it to you to make judgment. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Burgess.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, this may or may not, depending on sort of justice practices, if they happen and what it yields. I would request that Trustee Cook publicly give a publicly provided apology given freely and without reservation for the harm caused.
So do we have a seconder for that first before I speak to it? No. Anything else? Okay. Then I'm going to say that we've concluded item D1, unless you have a motion, Trustee McKinley.
I will make a motion to move that we bar Trustee Cook from 3 meetings of the board, as well as the 3 meetings of our private committee meetings as well. Well, based on previous precedent set by our board to another trustee, to be fair, that trustee was barred from 3 meetings of the board, including the private session meetings. These are also dealing with media. So I feel they're very similar. There were actually 4 violations mentioned. We mentioned the numbers. I'm throwing that out there. If nobody wants that, then that's fine. We'll just go on.
Okay, what I was asking you to do is you have to include in your motion. So you have to say specifically which meetings, start date, end date, and the reasons why you are signing that sanction. And I would caution you again there is no such thing as precedent in this matter. It's an individual investigation. It's not tied to a previous one.
I'm just going to withdraw.
Anyone else? Trustee Burgess?
I think there's some appetite for barring Trustee Cook from meetings. I do think that, the motion I would do is I would bar Trustee Cook from the meetings held in January, February of 2026. And the reason I would give for board meetings, not committee. The reason I would give is it's in the final term. She can conclude all the work that she's done on the meetings or the committees that she's been assigned to. Still attend an organizational meeting and...
Sorry, could you do your motion, please?
Okay.
Your motion?
Well, I don't know if I have on my calendar here what it is, but I would bar Trustee Cook from meetings of January 26th and February 2026. So what I have is a board meeting on January 20th and a board meeting on February 17th. I think that's it. And what committee? No, I don't think so. Just those 2 board meetings. And the reason for the timing is, as I mentioned, that still lets Trustee Cook finish her year. It's been a year since
I'd like to nail down the wording of your motion.
Oh, the wording of the motion is to bar Trustee Cook from the public board meetings of January 20th and February 17th.
Because
as a sanction for causing harm because of her
the
media
breaches.
interview, because she has been found in breach of the code of conduct
Thank you.
for the media interview of April
Thank you.
2nd.
Do we have a seconder for that motion? Trustee Nelson? Anyone like to speak on the motion? Trustee Burgess?
Sorry, I didn't take my mic off. The reason is I think that to not disturb the rest of the term and her obligations in what she's doing in the committees, and to reflect at organizational meeting what she wants to do, or what, whatever, how we organize ourselves in the new year. And that will just, out of the 2 months of the year that I think have, I don't know, the hardest, like the least heavy agendas. It's a lighter kind of a missing of meetings, I'm going to say. So I'll just leave it at that.
Would anyone else like to speak on the motion? I think I'm going to comment. So I thoroughly believe that the media interview was egregious. I was highly disturbed and insulted and upset and all the other emotions that go along with it. There were some specific references to how she won the election, and I didn't take kindly to that. However, I also didn't see any continuation of that kind of behavior towards the board or myself. It happened. It shouldn't have happened. It was not good. I didn't like anything about it. I didn't like the fact that it was circulated through all the media outlets, was circulated across the province through OPSPA. I really disliked all of that. However, I'm not sure that to bar Trustee Cook from any meetings would serve any purpose. I just my opinion, but I don't think the behavior has continued. And I think, especially from her comments at the last board meeting, that she would like to move forward and not backwards. And I just right now, I don't think that I'm going to support that motion. But if anyone else wants to speak to it, Trustee McKinley?
Yeah. I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, and it bothers me because I heard a lot. I was offended and hurt by things that she said, and I have yet to hear her in over a year ever speak to me and say, or to the rest of the board. She may have spoken to you, I don't know, and maybe that makes it easier, but she's not spoken to me or said anything to me, and it would have made a whole lot of difference, because I do tend to be an extremely forgiving person. But we already have sanctioned another trustee for a media thing that is okay somehow, that we sanctioned Trustee Chin, and she missed several meetings, but we're not okay with. So for that reason, I will support it, because I haven't heard anything from the trustee that makes me think that she's changed, because she hasn't spoken to me about anything.
Anyone else on the motion? Okay, I'll call for the vote. Oh, you want to speak on the motion, Trustee Chin?
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. I oppose this motion because I think Trustee Cook did this out of good intention, and she's trying to help the communities and to have their opinions reflected. And there is something happened in the public meeting that we were not given chance to discuss the acronym of the new name, and which was actually worse. So
Point of order, Madam Chair.
that made
Point of order, Madam Chair. I don't think this is on the motion.
Yes, my motion is that is on that.
It's her opinion on whether or not the trustee should be barred from 2 meetings.
Yes, I'm saying that what she did out of goodwill and is forgivable. So I oppose this sanction, and I don't think this kind of sanction will help anything, based on my own experience. And it's hurtful, it's accumulating, it's punitive.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else on the motion? Trustee Armstrong?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. I agree that I think that's punitive. I can't see that anything can be repaired because of that, or with that. Thank you.
Anyone else on the motion? No. Okay. I'll call for the vote. All those in support? Trustee Nelson, Trustee McKinley.
Recorded vote, please.
That's why I'm calling the names. Trustee Nelson, Trustee McKinley, Trustee Burgess. All those opposed? Trustee Chin, Trustee Buckler, Trustee Hatfield, Trustee Armstrong, and Trustee McCowie. So the motion is lost. Thank you. Anything else? No. So D1 on your agenda has been concluded. We're now moving to the report with regard to the allegations of breaches by Trustee Armstrong. And again, I'll remind the board that our obligation tonight, sorry. Oh, Trustee Armstrong, sorry.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. I do not wish to be disrespectful at all, but the hurt that has been mentioned here, also the kids in the community were hurt as well. And I'm
sorry, Trustee Armstrong. I know.
Point of order.
Please let me finish.
No, I can't. Trustee Armstrong, I already called item number D2, and you can't speak to that.
I am excusing myself. That's why
But there's no preamble to why or where or whatever. Sorry.
I can't get this off. I am
Sorry.
excuse myself.
Oh, if you'd like to leave, you can leave. Yeah. Yeah.
I can't take it. There we go.
Could you turn the mic off there, please? Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So just to clarify, 2/3 vote will be 5.
On this one? Is
5. 5. Okay. So, the same process on this one. Looking for a motion, whether there's a breach or no breach, and this was all from one matter, and that was Trustee Armstrong's participation in a podcast that was investigated, and you have the report. with regard to the findings. It starts around page 114 in red. Okay, are we all there? So just in summary, the investigator determined that Trustee Armstrong did commit breaches of the code, sections 3, 6, 14, 23, and 24. Do we have a motion whether or not there was a breach of the code? Trustee Burgess?
I would move in accordance with the GECDSB Regulation RGV 06 Trustee Code of Conduct and the applicable sections of the Ontario Education Act as it read immediately prior to January 1st, 2025, and taking into consideration the findings, recommendations, and opinions of the investigator documented in the report dated April 17th, 2025. It is April 21st. I'm sorry, I knew there was a difference. April 21st, 2025, from Reuben Tomlinson LLP to the Board of Trustees regarding allegations of breaches of the code by Trustee Armstrong. The GECDSB Board of Trustees finds that Trustee Armstrong has breached sections 3, 6, 14, 23, and 24 of the code for the reasons given by the investigator in the report, which reasons we adopt.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Trustee Buckler? Anyone would like to speak to the motion? Just Trustee Burgess first.
All right, that off. I'll put it on if I could. Again, Madam Chair, I was appreciative of getting the findings, but I do find that some of the findings I don't agree with. One of the things is my ability to contact Trustee Armstrong to get her not only to maybe attend one of the meetings and or to give me some input from regarding the students in Pelee Island.
Trustee Burgess, can you keep your remarks to the motion, please?
It is to the motion. It's in here, and I guess I could find which section, okay? But the fact is, it was found in here that there was maybe some dispute that perhaps she wasn't contacted, et cetera, and that there wasn't evidence of because of the bill that she submitted as proof of, but her bill only showed outgoing calls, not incoming calls.
We're not debating the investigator's findings.
Okay.
We're debating whether or not there was a breach in those sanctions, according to the findings of the investigator.
Okay, our instructions were to...
Those weren't instructions, they were guidelines on the process.
Right. One moment. Our obligation is to either accept or reject the findings of the investigator's reports. So I accept the huge majority of them, and I reject some of them. So
that
my
doesn't
commentary...
impact your motion.
Pardon me?
That doesn't impact your motion. Your motion is that there's a finding of the breaches.
Yep.
So unless you want to amend...
I can hold those two thoughts at the same time, I guess. Anyway, I'll get to the point. I made some remarks. I want to say in a similar way, because this stands as a well-viewed and shared piece of media that has a heavier weight in the community in which it has its impact, and that is the catchment area of Erie Migration District School, primarily Kingsville, but certainly beyond the town of Kingsville to the whole catchment area. That Kingsville podcast doesn't have a great following, etc. But the interview that they had with me as a member when I attended after the last meeting of the committee, prior to the deliberation of the board, when I, on that podcast, discussed what came next, including the option for selecting a new name. And because we had received information, and I did talk about Peely Island and all of us, I had already contacted Trustee Armstrong and was getting information from my colleagues
Trustee
about
Burgess?
it really makes a difference because her testimony in the podcast,
the motion
and the
that you put
findings,
forward
right?
is that we, for the reasons that we adopt.
The
So if
reasons
you
we
want to, if you want to amend your motion not to adopt the investigator's report, that's something different.
The reasons
So-
why we adopt are, we come to the same conclusion. We come to the same conclusion. The findings are the findings. There are some points in here for clarification because I was not given an extra opportunity. This is the first time I've seen it. Okay.
The first time we've all seen it.
Right.
So,
Well, no, I've seen it a couple of iterations because I was interviewed for this. So I will just cut to the chase.
Point of order.
yes, you need to speak to the motion.
I am
Not-
speaking to
not-
the motion.
I-
I'm speaking to
Okay.
the motion
Point of order.
3, 6,
Yeah,
14.
point of order.
I'm going to take your point of order.
23
What's
and
your point
24.
of order? What's your
My
point?
point of order is that based on the procedure, the person who is accused has no right to speak. I mean, it should be fair because it's
fair.
assumed.
Trustee Armstrong has left the room.
Yeah, I
So-
know.
so
I mean, why?
That's not a valid point.
No, that's
No,
valid. I haven't
no.
seen it.
No, the person who
We should base on all the documents here. If you add something new,
Trustee Chin,
Trustee,
I'm going to ask you to leave the
speak.
meeting, please.
There is no chance for you to add points. Because
Trustee Chin, please stop because you're out of order. Trustee Armstrong is the only trustee who's not allowed to speak on this, and she has left. So your point is not valid. That you're stop, please stop. If you can't control your words, I'm going to ask you to leave because you are out of order. No, your point is not in order. You don't have a point of order. No, you don't have a valid point of order. I'm moving back to Trustee Burgess. Stop. Please stop. Trustee Burgess, please be more specific to your motion.
Thank you. Throughout the findings, which I agree with, for section 3, 6, 14, 23, and 24, I would also like to say that there was more fallout from the breaches, the very clear breaches of confidentiality, of disparaging remarks, of not upholding the decision of the board, etc.
So Trustee
There's something-
Burgess,
yeah.
that might go towards your motions of, if there are motions of sanctions.
I
Yeah.
agree, but there's
Yeah.
something here that is extra in that it's a breach of confidentiality that has hurt community members in a way I can't fix. So I want it noted that it's particularly egregious. The podcast that remains is, and the way that these have stood the test of time in over a year and still remain, and the name is still contested by Trustee Armstrong as lately as the last meeting, that not only are the findings here, there is no evidence of any kind of remorse or any acceptance of the ombudsman report or the due process that we had, which has been completely vetted. No acknowledgement that the name was vetted properly by a professional of this board. So I want it clear that Trustee Armstrong is unequivocally in breach of Section 3, 6, 14, 23, and 24.
Anyone else on the motion of findings of breach? No. On the motion, Trustee Chin?
Actually, I watched the video, and I really think that Trustee Armstrong, and she's very sincere, and she is with integrity to talk about what happened with the.
No. Trustee Chin, you're out of order. We're dealing with the investigator's report and the investigator's findings, not your findings. And that's very clear in our policy that the trustees can't provide their own investigation and their own interpretation of an investigation. So I'm going to call that your comments out of order, and I'm going to move to the vote. So all those in support of the finding of the breach.
Recorded vote, yeah. Thank you.
Sorry. Trustee Nelson, Trustee McKinley, Trustee Buckler, Trustee Hatfield, Trustee Armstrong, Trustee Burgess. Sorry. Just cross-eyed. I take that back. Trustee Burgess and Trustee McCowie. McCowie, Burgess, Hatfield, Buckler, McKinley, Nelson. Thank you. And opposed is Trustee Chin, and that motion passes. So we've now established that there has been a breach of several codes in our policies, several sections of our policy. So for motions for sanctions, and I would like to move a motion of censure. So my motion would be, I move that the Board of Trustees censure Trustee Armstrong for her conduct during the Kingsville podcast on August 3rd, 2024. On this occasion, Trustee Armstrong breached sections, I think it's 3, 6, 14, 23, and 24 of the Trustee Code of Conduct through the statements she made during the podcast as determined by the investigator in the report of Rubin Tomlinson LLP, and for the reasons given by the investigator in the report, which reasons we adopt. Trustee Armstrong's remarks during the podcast were personal, demeaning, and disparaging of her fellow trustees and the board. Furthermore, Trustee Armstrong failed to act in a manner that would support public confidence in the abilities and integrity of Trustee Burgess and the board. I have a second. Oh.
Do we have a seconder for the motion? Trustee Nelson? Any discussion around the motion? Trustee Chin?
Based on the motion, the words, I think something unclear. Did anywhere in the report said that Trustee Armstrong demeaning other trustees? Is there, so where is it? I just think, yeah, where is it demeaning other trustees?
Do you happen to have that, Trustee Nelson?
Yes, thank you, through you, Madam Chair. So on page 164 in red, 45 in black, Trustee Armstrong further speculated that there must have been some ulterior hidden motives and that giving the school a vulgar acronym may have been intentional. I find that very offensive, and I find that very that depletes our public confidence alone. And then it continues on to page 165, if you'd like to read that.
Oh, I'm asking the conclusion from the investigator, because this is your feeling, but
Sorry, Trustee
No.
Chin,
yeah,
those are the words of the
yeah,
report.
those are the words, but
of the
didn't say
investigator.
demeaning other trustees.
That's the
Do you have
findings
this?
of the investigator.
Yeah, the investigator just described what happened. I didn't say that demeaning other trustees. I didn't use the word demeaning, so that's what I say, that in the motion we should be careful using this word.
Trustee Burgess.
I support censure. I will go to page 164 and cite the same one because it was Trustee Armstrong's words in the podcast that were clear on its face and found, through you, Madam Chair, found to be demeaning, disparaging, conspiratorial, undermining public confidence in public education. The accusations and the allusions that this board had hidden motives, ulterior motives, that we were giving the name a vulgar acronym on purpose, and then going on to say she floated the possibility. She did. Well, I think there may have been some money involved, maybe. She made a reference that there were deals in politics and that she was limited in her effectiveness because she won't play that game, as if the idea was that we play games or something. This section right there can't be refuted in any other way. So as far as the finding here, it is on its face in Trustee Armstrong's words. So I don't think it's debatable. It's what do you do about it? So a censure, it's certainly worthy of the censure. That's why I would suggest I support that motion.
I call the question on this then. All in support, we'll have a recorded vote, all in support of censure. That's Nelson, McKinley, Buckler, Hatfield, Burgess, and McCowie. And opposed, Chin.
That motion carried. So, Trustee Burgess?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Further sanctions. I would still find value in restorative justice practices in that they're in the report. Again, I see no movement, and in fact, up until the last meeting, no movement or recognition. And in the podcast, not found in the report, but if you look at the video, oh well, the ombudsman causing dispersions about the ombudsman, that somehow we must have known and cooked something there. That's just beyond absurd, really, really conspiratorial and bizarre. And I think restorative justice sessions, I don't think it's going to take one, but I would move that we extend, on behalf of the board, that a restorative justice practice be requested for Trustee Armstrong on behalf of the board, certainly including anybody named in the report, me, other members of the committee. I'm going to name Trustee McKinley again, and anybody else of the board who wanted to participate in that, so that all of her questions that she keeps saying in this, that would be my motion. First of all, that's where it stopped. It would be a repeat of the first one. The sanctions come. Can we repeat what I said earlier? Maybe they just capture the same words. I'm sorry. It's easier.
Restorative practice facilitation be requested of Trustee Armstrong and include at least Trustee Burgess and McKinley and any other member of the Board of Trustees.
Do I have to cite the sections that it alludes to? I mean, it really is no. Okay, just quickly. There has to be a discussion and not one-way thing and accusations that nobody's helping me, nobody's helped me, nobody contacted me, I don't know what I'm doing, I don't know, aspersions about, oh, it couldn't have been vetted. We need to have a session where facts are determined and agreed to. And that hasn't happened yet with Trustee Armstrong, even throughout all of this investigation. And I think as a sanction, again, as a healing piece, we have to come to some resolution where we agree on facts and we don't get bogus facts cited.
Anyone else on the motion? Trustee Chin?
The procedure of this, and the provincial government has already removed the right of trustees to vote for trustee code of conduct breach. They already removed.
No, Trustee Chin, that's not correct. So you could speak on the motion with regard to restorative justice.
Could you give me the... Yes, I think we already vote for that is breach the code of conduct, and I don't think a further sanction will be any helpful to the trustee and in upholding her integrity and responsibility. So I think sentencing her as a breach of code of conduct is enough, and we cannot require more and more punitive sanctions on her, and we cannot make judgment that she is wrong. There is no right for us to judge her action, and she might breach the code of conduct, but it doesn't mean that she is morally wrong or something she deserves penalty. I don't think so.
Okay.
So
you're getting into...
I oppose that.
Okay.
I oppose that.
Okay, we're going to stop you there. Thank you.
Thank you. I will support the restorative justice. I only hope that the trustees actually engage, because there was an area that there was many areas that offended me, but when I also read that there were no trustees that helped her, I was offended, because I reached out numerous times from the time we were elected until that time, and I still would have. I would think any of my colleagues would say that even if I've had a disagreement with them, I have always still picked up the phone if they called, been respectful. I reached out to many new trustees to help them and answer questions. Some of them could attest to that here at the table.
So keep to the motion.
That is one area that I read and thought that needs to be brought to her attention. Like some of those statements, many of her statements hurt.
Trustee Nelson?
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. I will support this motion for restorative justice. It's evident to me that there is a lot of hurt amongst us as trustees, and I hope that this is an opportunity to come from a position of understanding and moving forward.
Thank you. Anyone else on the motion? I would just like to add that I think that I hope Trustee Armstrong accepts the invitation, because I think that there were at one point I thought the investigator was going to conclude that she breached every single thing in the code. It seemed like he was heading that way in a number of the remarks that he made. And I think Trustee Armstrong in particular could benefit from a restorative justice session where we can say how we feel. So I hope she will accept the invitation. I also wanted to say that I think in a limited way, this report has provided a lot of information to refute her comments, and I hope she reads it. I don't know if she has or not, but I hope she does, because I think that it should give her a better understanding of the error of her ways. And I in particular was interested in the part about her defense about being a new trustee, and the investigator pretty much knocked that one down. So I found that to be helpful, and that I think the restorative justice can help us explain that to her. Trustee Nelson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just for clarification, this would also be an opportunity for Trustee Armstrong to gain some clarity and some understanding and to voice her concerns as well. Thank you.
Absolutely, yep. Okay. So on the motion for restorative justice, Trustee Chin?
I'm wondering, since you said that this is a chance for Trustee Armstrong to speak her opinion, and is that public or private?
As part of the restorative justice process. Mm-hmm. It's not for the public. It's for the trustees that participate. It's not a board meeting. Okay, I'm going to call the vote. All those in support of requesting a restorative justice. Trustee Nelson, turn your mic off. Trustee Nelson, Trustee McKinley, Trustee Buckler, Trustee Hatfield, Trustee Burgess, Trustee McCowie. Opposed, Trustee Chin, and that motion carries. Thank you. Is there anything further? Trustee Burgess?
There are two matters, and I don't know whether we need to have a motion to go into private session, but I will refer to it without naming somebody, and maybe that will do it. But I would like to move that we bar Trustee Armstrong from ever participating in any private session meeting until the end of her term. And the reason, the rationale, and it's captured in the report, is there was a very serious breach of confidentiality. That's it. Okay, the motion?
Make your motion.
That's the motion. To bar, I would suggest that the GECDSB bar Trustee Armstrong from ever participating in any private session meeting until the end of her term in fall of 26. From attending and participating or voting in public session on anything arising from any matter of private session until the end of her term.
Do we have a seconder for that motion? Trustee McCowie? Okay. So to discuss, yep, Trustee Burgess?
In the motion, in the findings rather, there are citations where the investigator found Trustee Armstrong in breach, particularly of matters of a confidential nature, either alluding to things that didn't happen in a confidential meeting of the board, or things made up about something that she thought happened in a confidential meeting of the board. And by intentionally singling out and naming students of the board and putting them in a position, oh boy, I said I wouldn't do it, where they thought they were guilty of something in a collective way and took on that guilt and appeared before the board, and it has taken on a life of its own, and blaming me and our board for enabling that when it didn't happen. It was a myth, was made up. It didn't happen. There are parts of it that happened, but naming an individual student and putting them in harm's way and their family and peers was so egregious. And it arose from somebody breaking confidentiality about something they thought they heard, misinterpreted, made up, and it became a fact. And I cannot trust, because of a pattern of behavior, I cannot trust Trustee Armstrong for the rest of her term. And I don't know how to extend that trust because breaches of confidentiality like that have happened over and over again. So I hope people support this. It will help us keep the integrity of what is under the Education Act meant to be kept confidential.
Anyone else? Trustee Chin on the motion.
Oh yes, I think it's too punitive. It's too much till the end of the session, till next election. It's too punitive, and I really don't think Trustee Armstrong deserves that. I totally disagree, and I warned you. I want the whole board to be careful doing such punitive things to trustees. Enough is enough. Thank you.
Excuse me, Madam
Thank
Chair,
you.
am I being warned or threatened in any way?
I'm.
Can you clarify, is somebody out of order by using really terrible language about warning somebody with some kind of consequences that are unnamed?
Trustee Chin?
I want to clarify, I'm not warning you, I'm warning the whole board not to do this such thing.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
not.
we heard you. We heard you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else on the motion? If not, I'm going to call the question. So this requires 5. So the motion is to sanction Trustee Armstrong for a breach of the code of conduct, to bar her from attending and participating in private session meetings commencing immediately until the end of the term, which would include not being able to vote in public session on matters that were in private. Okay, does everybody understand? All those in support? McKinley, Buckler, McCowie, Burgess, and I'm debating. All support Hatfield. That carries. Opposed, Trustee Chin and Trustee Nelson. Yeah. Thank you. Are we done with sanctions, or is there anything more that the trustees would like to suggest? Trustee Burgess?
I'm hoping that the restorative justice takes place and that something arises from that. But I feel that even though this is a public document, and even though it says clearly in here as a finding, hope I can get to it. Trustee Armstrong gave the false impression that Trustee Burgess had personally targeted a student. This is clearly disparaging towards Trustee Burgess and was a breach of Section 6 of the code. And there's quite a bit of elaboration on that one thing. I think the board has to take some sort of action towards this student. That student wrote to us in the podcast. There was a discussion with community members, and it has been widely seen, and it needs to be cleared up. And I think there's some action on behalf of the board. It's not a sanction to Trustee Armstrong necessarily. I would love to see a letter from Trustee Armstrong saying, I got that wrong. And I've been found that an independent investigation found that, oh yeah, I really got that wrong. But restorative justice may bring that out. I don't know. But on behalf of the board, I want to just remark that I think we owe it to the student and their family to make sure that they understand that that whole thing was misinterpreted.
I appreciate the sentiment. I'm just not sure how that comes about, except that this is a public document and the censure is public, part of our minutes, as well as any other sanctions that take place. And those are also public documents.
And just to be sure, I don't want to get out of line, but I feel because it's linked to something I never did. I didn't reach out to anybody or speak with anybody. I don't know if I can, but I'd like to.
With any of the public,
I think it's the board that owns it, but I don't want to cause more harm. I want to help heal
you have
them.
a motion?
Well, it's not a sanction. It's
Right. So we're on sanctions.
Right.
Are there any further motions for sanctions in this matter? No. Then I'm going to move us forward to the last part of the process. The last part of the process is that we notify the trustees of the findings. So they would be notified of the motions for the breaches as well as the sanctions. And I need a motion from the board. I'm going to read to you what kind of motion I need, and somebody could move it, please. The chair of the board, on behalf of the Board of Trustees, shall give Trustee Kathy Cook and Trustee Nancy Armstrong written notice of the determination and sanctions imposed by the Board of Trustees, and that they have 14 days after this notice is received for them to make written submissions to the Board of Trustees in respect of the determinations and the sanctions. Moved by Trustee Buckler, supported by Trustee McCowie. And just so you know that what this means is they can respond to the sanctions. They can respond to the findings of the breach. They have to do it in writing. It's not a challenge of the report. They have to speak directly to the decisions that were made tonight. If that happens, if they do make written submissions within the 14 days, then we meet again, and we have tentatively given you a date for that meeting. And then the board would then consider their written submission, and at that point, you would either confirm the decisions of the board from this meeting, or we would reject the decisions based on any information that might come in those responses. Okay, so we understand that. So then I'm going to ask for the vote. All in support? Nelson, McKinley, Buckler, Hatfield, Burgess, and McCowie. Opposed? Trustee Chin, although I probably should have mentioned that this is a required part. Yeah, it's required. It's just the motion is actually giving me the authority to do it on behalf of the board. But anyway, that's it. So we've concluded the process. We'll send out those letters as soon as possible, and then I'll let you know if there are written responses, you'll receive them. Okay? Thank you very much for everyone's time this evening. I know this was difficult, and I appreciate the commitment that you've made to the meeting. Thank you very much. I'll declare the meeting adjourned.